Hey, Marcus House with you here. In the previous episode, we sent a massive moon tower up to the moon manually, and we dropped that at an inclination of almost 0 degrees, basically to lead up to this mission. I've been working on this for a long time. We are sending this massive moon lander today to the moon, but we are doing it without using any manual controls. I have programmed this vessel to get all the way to the moon using only the Kerbal operating system mods and a lot of programming. Now today I'm going to demonstrate the actual mission here. We're going to kick off by first opening up the little Kerbal operating system mod panel here, and we're going to run my program. Now, as of this point, I am not touching any controls manually. I am running only the Kerbal operating system program, and the only thing that I'm doing is basically moving the mouse to change the view to give you guys better perspectives on things as things occur. So the very first step of this Kerbal operating system program is of course the launch process, and you'll see that I've got it sitting there very, very clearly right on that 90-degree mark line, and also just slowly incrementing our pitch so that it's progressing down towards 0. So I had done a lot of testing to check out what pitch increment is sort of best for this vessel. So we're basically just incrementing this down at a certain rate for every second that goes by. Now, I'm not going to be showing the actual code in this episode. There is going to be a follow-up episode to this one that's going to give you the code and the full breakdown, but it was just way too much to cover in the one episode. So you'll see as our apoapsis hits 70 kilometers, our program throttles this right down to 20%, and it's going to keep rolling over until it hits that 0 degree mark on the pitch. And as soon as it hits an apoapsis of 80 kilometers, it's going to then basically cut the thrust and wait until we're right up near the apoapsis to finalize the circularization. So just as it comes up here, you'll see everything happens at once. Our fairings will deploy, the engine cuts out, and now the Kerbal operating system program that I've written is just going to coast now until it gets to around 5 seconds before the apoapsis. It's actually reading this, and it's going to then decide when to do or when to start its circularization burn. Now what you'll notice, it all happens quite quickly, but what you'll notice when it's doing its circularization, it's going to pitch up and down to try to keep the time to apoapsis quite close to itself. That's the whole idea, to get a nice quick circularization. You can see it pitch up there, 10 degrees, and then it's going to pitch down, just wobbling back and forth just to keep that time to apoapsis right down. And then it does a very nice circularization there just at 80 kilometers. And yes, the solar panels deploy, the antennas deploy, it decouples itself, and a slight thrust away before jumping straight into a time warp to get to the point where we need to do our moon injection burn. Now it does all of this automatically. It figures out what our phase angle to the moon needs to be, and then it engages its engines and begins thrusting obviously towards the prograde marker. Now we have an inclination here of only 0.1 degree, so that launch was extremely successful. We don't need to change inclination too much during this mission. There will be a correction later, but you'll see as our apoapsis climbs there, I'll switch to the moon. As soon as it gets into the sphere of influence, you'll see there it throttled right down just to fine-tune that. Now, I got that right down to 15 kilometers there, and as we fall away from Kerbin and fall up in towards the moon, there's going to be a few more corrections. The first thing that the script does is turns towards the radial in or the radial out marker, depending on which way it needs to correct, and it gets that periapsis right down to 10 kilometers. So it automatically then time warps in to the periapsis and begins its retrograde burn to obviously fall down into a nice circularized orbit here of the moon. Now we have Burberry, we have Patos, and we have Astris on board here. The next thing that needs to happen after our retrograde burn is a slight correction, a slight inclination correction. You'll see we have an inclination here of 1.6 degree. You can see that from the readouts there up in the top left. And this is going to wait until we get to the ascending node. It's going to do a slight correction to drop this right down. So 0.07 is what we end up with here, which is close enough. Our target is right down here at an inclination of almost 0 degrees, so it automatically time warps here until it gets to the point where we need to start doing our landing burn. Now here we have some interesting calculations, some vector calculations that are basically trying to push our impact point towards the target. So you'll see we have an impact distance readout going on there in the Kerbal operating system readout there in the top left, and that impact distance is coming right down, so the vessel is automatically bringing that down using the Trajectories mod to calculate this. So we want to overshoot this just a little, which is why our target distance was still 150 meters, because as we come up over the top, we obviously reduce some of our velocity as we're doing sort of a suicide burn. So we're now beginning that burn now. You can see the target there coming up. It is perfectly aligned, and the vessel is just automatically adjusting its orientation to try to bring that right down so that it's as accurate as possible. And as we come down to landing, it's then set to basically hover here and just adjust until it gets to the exact landing point that it's supposed to be. Now I have set the landing point to be the exact latitude and longitude of the moon tower, with an additional 0.006 added to the latitude, just so it doesn't land right on top of the darn thing. So there we go, it has touched down automatically, the ladders come out, the lights have already been turned on, everything there was automatic, and the program has now ended. Now that is just awesome to be able to do all that. There's quite a few lines of code there. I'll go through all of that in the next episode, like I say, but we can now basically get our Kerbals out. So out you come, Burberry. You are our first test case here. You can come down these ladders. For some interesting reason, you get stuck here. I don't know why, so we can just jump down a little further. There is still a lot more that I need to demonstrate here for you, though. We are going to return the booster using only the Kerbal operating system program that I've written as well. Before doing that, Burberry, you need to hop into one of these science labs. We'll get out the next... God. Patos, you uncoordinated Kerbal. Get over here. You're going to take a drive in the Speed Rover. Just in case you guys didn't see the last episode, the Speed Rover is a lot of fun. I've got a link to that episode here up in the top right. But you can see basically what this thing can do. It's got some little engines on the back just so you can really get this thing moving. But just to demonstrate this thing quickly, you can see there we can just use the massive torque of the Mark II parts that are actually the main control bodies for these things. And yes, it's very controllable. You obviously do end up bouncing around all over the place if you're trying to turn in a tight circle when you're moving at 30 meters per second. But yes, the torque lets you compensate for that, which is quite handy. You can see there just using those rotation keys to fight this vessel and stop it from flipping over. But there we go, there's Patos's little joyride there completed. So out you pop there, you can now jump up into our moon tower vessel there as well. It's still fully loaded with fuel. And now finally, Astris, you can come out of here as well. We'll just jump you down. I think that's probably just nicer. Use the jetpack. Now, this vessel that I've launched here today is completely reusable. You can return all of these parts. You can actually return this lander here all the way to Kerbin, not losing any parts at all. I'm not going to do that in this episode because there's some more things that I want to show you in the next episode beforehand. For the moment, we are going to now jump back to our booster that is currently in an 80-kilometer orbit around Kerbin. There it is there. We'll just switch to that. And I'm simply going to bring up the Kerbal operating system control panel, run the Moonlander program again, and it's going to basically time warp us around the planet until it gets to the point where it needs to do its retrograde burn to come and land at the Kerbal Space Center. In the top left there, you'll see the Kerbal Space Center distance is currently at around 450 kilometers away from where we are right now. At exactly 360 kilometers, it's going to start doing its retrograde burn, and it's going to bring its impact point there just in front of the Kerbal Space Center, because as we get into the thicker part of the atmosphere, we are going to need to do a re-entry burn just to stop losing a lot of parts. So we need to set this to be overshooting the Kerbal Space Center by quite a distance. So you'll see the current impact distance there in the top left is around 14 kilometers. So that is going to reduce as we get to around 22 kilometers. A re-entry burn's going to occur right here just to basically stop all of our parts exploding, and that was enough to basically do that. So you'll see our impact distance is now falling. We've got our air brakes out, our impact distance now at around 4 kilometers. And as we get over the top of the Kerbal Space Center, we're going to do our last burn just to drop enough velocity to come down vertically, And obviously now you can see where our target is. We are attempting here to land on top of the vehicle assembly building. Now, I've programmed this and tested this so much, there's not much fuel left. The vehicle assembly building is extremely fragile. If I touch the deck here at any more than around 2 meters per second, the entire thing just explodes. I've tried this repeatedly, so it needs to be perfect, and there we go. It has just touched down there right in the middle. Absolutely perfect. There is absolutely no way that I could do that by hand with the amount of fuel margin that we had left there. And there we go. So it is just an absolute incredible little script there that I've got. What we can do now, of course, is just repeat this entirely, and I'm just going to hit F2, close off the screen, close off the controls, I should say, of the screen. You can see there the booster on the vehicle assembly building. We have 3 more Kerbals to take up, and we're going to do now a speed run through this. This vessel is now using the exact same program, with the exception of 2 numbers. One of those numbers being the actual coordinates of the landing site on the moon, so it's just offset in the opposite direction. Instead of adding 0.006 to the latitude, I've taken 0.006 from the latitude, so that should space itself quite nicely from the other vessel. And of course there is another different landing point on Kerbin, because obviously there is a booster sitting right on top of the vehicle assembly building. It's not going to be good to try to land a second one here. So the script there is just waiting till it gets to its apoapsis marker before it does its final circularization burn. It has started there, and you'll see as soon as it finishes, the solar panels will pop out, the antennas will pop out automatically, it'll detach from the booster, and then begin time warping away to begin its moon injection burn. Again, all of this is automatic, all of it is almost identical to the first mission. It's just that the rotation of Kerbin and the position of the moon was slightly different this time. So it's automatically figuring all this stuff out by itself. Now, in the description, like always, I have a link to this craft file. You can download the craft file. The only mod that you are going to need to open the craft file will be the Kerbal Operating System mod, because there is the little Kerbal Operating System script parts that actually go both on the booster and also on the ship component there. Then in the next episode, I'm going to go right through the script with you in a lot more detail. So for those that are really interested in how to program this sort of thing yourself, you're going to learn a lot there, and I'll provide that script then in that episode. So it's currently now doing its retrograde burn here to circularize around the moon, and then automatically time warp to the ascending or descending node to do a slight adjustment there to bring that inclination right down, and then of course warping right around to where it's going to do its landing burn. All this of course is sped up quite a bit this time around. Now, if you're interested in the Kerbal Operating System programming language and you want to learn a little more, I've got a link up here in the top right now which shows you how to do basically a simple mission to create a missile to impact at a certain point. So that one was a lot of fun. Also up here in the top right, I have got another link to a video on how to get to orbit. So I've already covered that part of this mission. So yes, coming down here to land now, you'll see we have got the other ship out already. And yes, just coming down at almost the same point, and it'll again hover to the opposite side of the tower and touch down there, ladders out, and there we go. We can now get our next set of Kerbals out. This here is Logie Kerman. Let's see if he can get past this point in the ladder. No, he just falls off. I'm going to have to see if I can fiddle around with that ladder to see if I can make that work. For the moment, we can board him into the moon tower. So there we go, we'll head back now to our second booster so that we can return that. Again, just running the Moonlander program. Again, this is going to time warp around, and you'll see there the numbers are almost identical. It's going to turn retrograde just as it gets to 360 kilometers. It's going to begin its burn. There we go there. So it's dropping that impact distance right down. Air brakes out whenever they can be. And as we come down again just before hitting 22 kilometers in altitude, it's going to do a slight correction burn, a slight re-entry burn I should say, just to stop ourselves exploding. And now right up over the Kerbal Space Center. Where are we going to land this time? I bet you can't guess. Of course you can guess. We are no longer targeting the vehicle assembly building this time. we are targeting the launch pad. Luckily, the launch pad has just a little more tolerance at impact, so this one wasn't quite as hard to get right, but at the same time, it was still quite different. I had to change the target altitude as well, because obviously it's not quite as high up as the vehicle assembly building. And there we go, we have landed 2 boosters there. How about that? That is just awesome, absolutely awesome. Both of them just standing there like it's the most natural thing in the world. What I'm interested to see actually is how much we can get when we recover these. Well, not so much the one on the launch pad, we know that's going to give us 100% return. But what about this one here? If we recover this one, surely we would also get 100% the value of that vessel back, obviously excluding the fuel. And only 98%? What? Come on, it's got to be more awesome to land on the vehicle assembly building the launch pad, surely. Of course, if we recover this one as well, that will show us 100% as we would expect. Come on, Kerbal Space Program developers, it's worth 100% to return it from the top of the vehicle assembly building. That needs an update. So I'll just close off today with some bloopers. I had plenty of mistakes here in this one. I basically just kind of touched down just a little too hard, and that was the end of both the vessel and the vehicle assembly building. And yes, I would like to thank you all for watching. If you did enjoy that episode, please do take a second and hit that like button. All of your support is just awesome. If you have any questions for me, of course, please do whack them down in the comments below. If this video has earned your subscription, welcome to the channel. And for all my existing subscribers, thank you for being so awesome. Just as a closing note, if any of you out there are Kerbal operating system experts or happen to actually be a developer of the Kerbal operating system mod, please do get in touch with me, because I'd love to talk to you about some things that I'm working on. That would be just awesome as well. As I've already said, there will be a follow-up to this episode that gives you all of the code and explains all of this coding in a lot more detail, so I'm really looking forward to giving that to you guys. This landing attempt here was just me just losing all of my parts before I managed to brake early enough, so that one was fun. Thank you all again for watching, and we'll see you all in the next video. Just to separate ourselves before we drop this massive fairing. It is still glowing there with all the heat that we generated punching through the atmosphere, so we'll just drop this. There we go. Switch the lights on, and yes, you'll see there we have got a massive tower, and we are punching this tower. Just going to continue